think she wants to do it. So, yeah, she's looking at social
It's 6:30, and I welcome all of you to the February 5th meeting of the Planning Commission. I believe a lot of you are here from Denver related to a couple of the proposals, so we welcome you. Our first order of business, first of all, I note there is a complete quorum of the board here tonight, and our first order piece of business to approve the minutes. So consider the minutes from January 8th of 2018. Does anybody have any changes or corrections that need to be made to the minutes? Mrs. Watson.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move to approve the January 8th minutes as submitted.
Do we have a second? Mrs. Woolman seconds the motion. All those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. The second set of minutes to consider are from January 15th, 2019. Anybody have any changes or corrections that need to be made? Can we consider a motion for approval? Mrs. Lassett, thank you.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the meeting minutes from Tuesday, January 15th, 2019 as submitted.
Do we have a second?
I second that motion.
Very good. Mrs. Woolman has seconded the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we have one member who disclosed, Mr. Stahl disclosed that the company he works for has done some work for and business with related to this first case, but that it will not impact any decision or consideration he will make tonight. So we just want to make that part of the record.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'd also like to disclose that my company does business with that same company, and I do not think it'll impact any of my considerations.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, item number 1 is case number GDP 18-005, Quebec, Colorado. Kat Hammer will represent the county on the towns south of Cherry Creek General Development Plan.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. The development is located southwest of the intersection of South Quebec Street and East Colorado Avenue. The proposal is located in Commissioner District number 4 and the 4 square mile neighborhood group area. The applicant, Michael Sullivan, on behalf of the property owner, the Moore Acres, is proposing a general development plan to allow for up to 74 two-story single-family attached units on 6.85 acres, up to 11 dwelling units per acre. The proposal also includes private streets, water quality detention pond, and 30% open space. The GDP is the first step in the 3-step process. It will establish the general framework for the land uses, site layout, and development density and intensity. The second step, if this GDP is approved, is a specific development plan, which will be required to be consistent with this the GDP if approved, and then following that specific development plan will be an administrative site plan. The property is currently zoned R2 and is used for single-family residential. It is classified as suitable for single-family with a density of 1 to 12 units per acre. If this GDP is approved, a new zoning would allow for 2-story townhome products. The applicant has conducted neighborhood research within the 4 square mile group and adjacent property owners, and I'm sure he will speak to that after my presentation. And there was a letter included in your packet from the applicant indicating more details about that community outreach. I want to let you know that the county attorney has reviewed the noticing documents and has determined that the Planning Commission has jurisdiction to make recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners on this case. And staff is recommending approval of case number GDP 18-005, Towns at South of Cherry Creek General Development Plan. I stand for any questions, and the applicant does have a presentation.
Are there any questions for Kat? Not at this time.
I want to make it note that I did receive a number of emails and phone calls within the past few days, and I have provided those to the Planning Commissioners via email and hard copy.
So we're now here for Mr. Sullivan.
Correct.
GPS signal lost. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Mike Sullivan with SRE Development Company. We're very pleased to be here this evening, and I'd like to start by thanking staff for all of their work on this project. I'd also like to thank the community. We've conducted an exhaustive community outreach effort in the neighborhood, and we've had, as well as coordinating with 4 Square Mile neighborhoods, and their feedback has been very beneficial to the project. We've also had some very engaged residents working with us from the start of the project. They attended our notice meetings, are communicating via phone and email over the last 9 months. So we really appreciate their feedback and their investment of time, and we'll continue to work with them as well as the community to incorporate their feedback. We do continue to hear about traffic concerns, existing traffic concerns, and on that front, we believe that we do have solutions that will help mitigate those existing concerns, including widening East Colorado, which we'll be able to do and install a new sidewalk, in addition to installing a dedicated turn lane onto Quebec. So that would make a right-hand dedicated turn so that traffic won't queue back on the East Colorado. Both of those are improvements that we're committed to doing, and I think that they've gone over and been received by the community very well. Having said that, we'll continue to work with the county and the community during this specific development plan, continuing to listen to the community and incorporate their feedback. With that, I'd like to turn it over to our architect, Paul Brady, to present a few more details on the project, and then we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Good evening. My name is Paul Brady with Godin Civic Architects. I just wanted to walk you through a few images of the project. This is an aerial image from the 4 Square Mile sub-area plan. The site is highlighted with the red boundary, and then the Colorado Avenue and the South Quebec Street are highlighted in red just to identify the site extra well. The 4 Square Mile sub-area plan identifies this parcel as single-family 1 to 12 DUs per acre, including single-family attached or townhomes. So this proposed use is right in line with that document. As Michael was saying, there's been a lot of reach out, coordination with the community, understanding issues of traffic, setback along the west edge there, etc. This chart kind of talks about some of those things. Just going through it, density, that 12 DU per acre is identified in the 4 Square Mile plan would be 82 units. The GDP is at 74, so it's a lesser amount. And as we work through that from GDP to site plan phase, that number may drop. It's just early in the process. Buffering to the west, the backyards in those homes along the edge of Denver there, they have an existing 20-foot rear setback. And so we've respected that setback by increasing the standard from 15 to 20 along that edge to be equal. We're also proposing a shared fence along that boundary as well. Buffering to Quebec, a lot of traffic, a lot of impacts, community concerns. We're 20 feet off of Quebec, and we have a sound wall at that 20 feet line, and so there's a gap between the sound wall and the face of the building. So those buildings can be up to 30 feet off the right-of-way for Quebec. Parking, the current GDP layout shows greater than the county standards at about a 2.36 per unit instead of a 2.25. So that's an excess of just shy of 10 extra spaces. Something to point out is even though we don't have architecture yet, the plan is anticipating side-by-side townhomes, and in that footprint it's large enough to have a private 2-car garage for every unit. So those would be enclosed 2-car spaces. As Michael was saying, traffic, the intersection at Colorado and Quebec is a concern, and we've been working and considering of how to do maybe that second access onto the north there, onto East Colorado Avenue as a ride-in or emergency access, something. Those are all being considered. Healthy neighborhood, there's right-of-way improvements, including 2 extra feet sidewalk along Quebec, And open space, there's 30% of open space within the community, including a commitment within the GDP to have a single programmed, nice outdoor space. So the site plan, just identifying some of those features. This is rotated just to fit the screen, so north is to the right. You can see the programmed open space, those greater setbacks, and then that intersection of East Colorado Avenue and Quebec highlighted, knowing that that's sensitive for traffic. Also, as part of the project, we would construct additional width within Colorado Avenue there to get an extra turn lane. Right now, if you're going east, there's only really 2 lanes, and we would widen that to 3. Talk about the way the boxes or the units would arrange. The white and the gray is an alley or a private street, and so most of these units would be an alternatively loaded garage or an alley loaded garage, and so the impact of the garages would be really minimized. And then in those greenways with the little the gray lines, that's a sidewalk showing access to the front door. Again, being at that GDP phase, no plans have been developed from an architecture standpoint. That said, we have had conversations with the neighbors about what type of architecture they want to see, also with the 4 Square Mile group. We've shown this sample board of just projects that are in our company's portfolio to kind of gauge people's interest of what they're interested in, and we've been taking notes with that. Another area that the neighbors have been pleased to hear is that this is proposed to be 2-story townhomes instead of 3-story. There's a lot of those in Denver right now. And so this is of a scale that's more compatible with those adjacent neighbors. No stacked occupancy, those private garages, it's really just side-by-side, single-family attached living. With that, do you have any questions?
Are there any questions? Not at this time.
Yes. So, Paul, I'm looking at this. Can you tell us what the access points are? Is this a direct access onto Quebec that we're seeing?
Yeah. The main access to the community is right off Quebec. Does that show up?
No.
The main access is here off Quebec, aligned with the existing road there. And it's a full movement turn, right out, straight, right in, you can turn in. That would be where the majority of the traffic for the community would be. And then this secondary access would be for fire only. Again, we're working through the details of how that intersection is designed, trying to take into account the concerns of the neighbors. It's kind of the next step we got to go through.
Thank you.
There is no existing turn lane off Quebec? Wouldn't it be?
There's an existing turn lane here.
Okay.
And to my knowledge, our civil engineers here, but no improvements besides the sidewalk and maybe some improvements to the bus stop are planned along Quebec. That extra turn lane is on East Colorado Avenue right here.
Okay. Reading all the emails, traffic is obviously a concern.
Yeah. As one of the main parts of that is Cherry Creek Drive is over here. There's a left turn, signalized left turn at Quebec, but at Monaco there isn't. And so Google Maps is sending a lot of people through right next to Cook Park there. So trying to just minimize the amount of traffic that flows onto Colorado Avenue has been the focus of our discussions.
Thank you. Any other questions right now? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kat, do you have any other comments you want to make? Okay. We will then open the public hearing, and we have quite a few people that have signed up We ask that you please limit your comments to 3 minutes apiece. And if several of you have the same ideas, you could perhaps have one represent your ideas so they don't get too repetitive. We have received all the emails and summaries of phone calls, so we have a little bit of an idea of what some of you are thinking. But you're welcome tonight to speak. And if you haven't signed up, you will have an opportunity at the end. The first one who was signed up is Dale Nugan on South Oneida Street. And please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Dal Nguyen. I live at 1875 South Oneida Street, which is about 4 blocks west of Quebec, the proposed site. I want to start out by saying that, I am in favor of this. I think what's proposed is better than what's existing there. Also, I'd like to say that this is an opportunity for us to address a major issue, safety issue that's been existing that we couldn't get addressed because where that intersection is a convergence between Denver County and Arapahoe County. So who can address the problem there? So the numbers that the traffic that goes through Colorado Avenue, shown on here, in the morning, there are 269 vehicles that turn right and that goes westbound from Quebec onto Colorado Avenue. That's a big number between the hours of 7 o'clock to 8:45. And again, versus only 70 vehicles going eastbound in the morning. Now, in the evening, it reverses that flow. We don't have that many houses in the neighborhood, so, people are using this to take a shortcut, basically. They're cheating to get it on to Monaco or to there. Now, compare those numbers to South Cherry Creek Drive. We're doing half the volume. They have turn signals of 2 lanes going on there. That intersection is a blind intersection. You're basically speeding going southbound, and it's about 150 feet from South Cherry Creek Drive to that intersection, and a lot of people will hit their brakes to turn on there because there's no lights there, and the stop sign is not visible because, again, there's no obstructing that. What I would like to propose, again, is that originally that street was supposed to be a right-hand turn only going southbound onto Quebec. We've been fighting this, trying to get this done for years. We see this as an opportunity to address the community and a safety and evaluation standpoint. I think one of the appeals for these new units going in would be Cook Park right down the street. Having a safe way to, walk down Colorado Avenue without having to worry about turning your back to traffic to get to the front, I think is a very appealing, and a safety, build a community there. So, thank you.
The next person who has signed up is Lou Grounds.
Yeah, I'm in consensus with the right turn only. Also, I think that would...
Give us your name and address.
Louis Grounds, 6840 East Mexico. I'm right on the park.
Thank you.
So I like the right turn idea only, and that would save the developer some money of widening East Colorado Avenue, so you could save that money and put it in your pocket. Also, I would think I'm agreeing with Ed Horning's idea that maybe there should be some access for the development going into East Ashbury Avenue on the south side. So when you get to him, then he can expound on that. That's all.
Jim Stone of Poplar Street.
I'm Jim Stone, 1906 South Poplar Street. I've backed up to the open field for 20 years, and I knew this day would come. So about 6 months ago, maybe longer than that, I saw some surveyors back there and asked them what they were doing, and they told me they were looking for utility line locations for the development. So I went to Arapahoe County, found the developer, Mike, and I am the neighborhood watch coordinator for the 2 blocks that back up to the open field on the west side. I called Mike, and he said, I've been looking for somebody to help coordinate things that I want to do and meetings with the neighbors and what have you. So I've actually been helping Mike. to do what he wanted to do, which is to reach out and make sure that everybody knew anything they needed to know regarding the development. And I can tell you, I've been so pleasantly surprised in working with Mike. I've met with him 3 or 4 times now, been down here 2 or 3 times talking to some of y'all, and everybody's been very forthcoming, very forthright. Mike has bent over backwards to be cooperative, be a good listener, be helpful. So, much to my, delight, I can tell you all that I think Mike and his development company are going to do and are trying to do the best possible thing, under the circumstances given on behalf of the neighborhood. So I'm just really, really happy to be able to say that my dealings with him have been 100% positive, in helping him out, and he's been listening to everything that I've been saying, which is, a few things here and there. The thing that I'm going to pick on is entrance and egress onto Colorado Avenue from the development. And, ideally, it would be a chain, the emergency in and out only, so no traffic could get onto Colorado Avenue at all from the development. That's a personal observation from 20 years, because Colorado Avenue just gets hit so heavily already through traffic cutting through from Quebec to Oneida, and then farther back ultimately to Monaco. And the one thing I'd like to point out is that maybe about 12 years ago, we went through this process with the gated community just to the north of Colorado Avenue, and that gated community was an old dumpy field with an old dumpy house on it, kind of like the one that we're talking about now is. The developer wanted to have entrance and egress onto Colorado Avenue, okay? And, of course, our fears were the same as they are now. Please, no more additional traffic on the Colorado Avenue. And I'm pleased to report that at that time, Arapahoe County, in conjunction with that developer, agreed to an emergency-only entrance and egress onto Colorado Avenue. It's gated, it's chained, and it's still that way today. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is Dan Brooks.
I'm Dan Brooks. I'm at 1715 South Oneida. I would agree with the first two. I do not have a problem with the density. The problem I have with the gate across that they want to put up emergency access. You asked for an inclusive neighborhood. That doesn't make an inclusive neighborhood. You guys putting up a big gate. We'd like the intersections to be controlled. They're not controlled. Even your own sheriff says they're uncontrolled access, uncontrolled intersections. So beyond what they would say, we'd like some kind of control to be put in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Marion Brum-DeBarros.
I just didn't really have it.
Okay. Thank you. Joseph Wilson.
Hi, my name is Joseph Wilson. I live at 1846 South Poplar Street, 4 houses south of the intersection of Poplar and Colorado Avenue. Commissioners, I am in agreement with most of the first 3 talks here about traffic. I agree with that. Then I also have to emphasize the previous person that was up here. I do believe that intersection with the new drive coming into Colorado Avenue needs to be addressed in some way, shape, or form. Full movement in and out, even a right in, right out, will cause issues in that area. We feel that limiting to a fire access is probably the most that we can foresee, matching, which is Oak Park at Cherry Creek, which is just north of the development with that wall enclosure that was there. That was done 12 years ago. I do also have another issue that I wanted to just make sure and bring up, which is drainage. A majority of our drainage in the back area there is there is no horizontal drainage, and we're concerned of drainage coming from this development to our lots. It would cause some issues. We already have issues right now with drainage, and we want to make sure those are in control. We'd love to see the traffic report if it is available to see, or not traffic, drainage report when it's ready. I think a preliminary one is out right now, but the final drainage report, we would like to see that when that officially comes out. Other than that, everything can be addressed at a later time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed Hornig?
Yeah, hi, my name is Ed Hornung, and I live at 1707 South Locust Street near Cook Park. First, I want to thank you all for letting us speak. Since we are Denver residents, we appreciate the fact that we can speak to you. Also to Mike and his team for reaching out to our community. As you can tell, the major concern is traffic on East Colorado Avenue, and I have another suggestion and maybe a request. Is it possible to have an entrance onto East Asbury Avenue? It's right by your, may I go up here and show you where that is? That's right there. And it comes right down and touches the property. The advantage to using that area is it's not a residential. It's a commercial area. It has easy access to major crossroads of Monaco and Evans, and I think it'd be something that you should look at if that's possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Barilla?
Hi, my name is Karen Barella. I live at 1866 South Poplar Street. So our house backs up to the property in question. And what I'm sure is a shocking turn of events. I'm really concerned about traffic. So going again off of what Jim and Joseph have both noted about the other development that has an EVA-only access point off of Colorado Avenue, I would just like to see the same thing with the proposed project. I have 3 small kids, and it is absolutely terrifying the rate of speed at which people travel down Colorado Avenue on a given day. And the idea of increasing that amount of traffic is really concerning to me. I can't tell you how many times people just blow by that stop sign. There's not really good control of that, and it's a really frightening thing. And I also had concern related to the traffic when it looked like the sheriff's office had talked about having a controlled stoplight at Colorado and Quebec, and then the traffic survey came back and said no control was needed. I also have the same concern about what the control would be up at the Quebec Street ingress and egress, where it looked like that was going to be just like stop sign control. With going out onto Quebec and the high rate of speed, if that was going to increase the number of accidents that could happen, especially as people get used to a new traffic pattern once the development is made. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next is Jeff Bruzak.
I'm Jeff Bruzak. I live at 1826 South Poplar, so I back up to it as well. I think it's probably a good use for the property through there. Again, I've got a lot of the same concerns. I'll skip repeating all the ones that they did. The only additional portion that I have is I think there's a root problem to that traffic through there, and that's the South Cherry Creek Drive. And like you smiled when they were first talking about it, when you go down there, you can't make a left. That leaves your choice going up to Leesdale or going down to Evans. And traffic's not willing to do that, and that's why the traffic comes through where we are. I know that's Denver, but I think the 2 counties really need to work together on that. Denver says we can't make a left because we got a stoplight on the other side of the street. Then they said, let's make a parkway to go straight so that it makes it hard to get from Arapahoe County into Denver, and we'll slow down the traffic that comes through. So you get to Monaco, you have to go right for half a block. You follow it down along the park there, which seems like that's where you want traffic controlled more than down where there's nothing, and then at Holly, you make a left for a half a block and go straight again. Well, it really slows it all up, and I think that's the root problem. I do agree with the idea that we do an emergency-only exit out of there. I think that made sense in the other one. I think it makes sense here, and I also agree that a stoplight at the Quebec one would be Quebec's a very busy street. Making a left to come out of it and go north would be very difficult without it, and so those are my thoughts.
Thank you very much. Dave Falconer.
Hi, my name is Dave Falconer. I live at 1840 South Oneida. I told Kat this morning some of my problems. I think you have them in writing. I wanted to thank Kat for taking the time to chat with me. It was very helpful. I just wanted to say that I think that I really support the emergency access only onto Colorado, and if we made that a right turnout on Colorado, that would really solve a lot of the traffic problems, I think. And so I really want to support that. I have no problem with the development in general. I think it's a good use for the property, so that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. John Haycraft?
I'm good.
You're good? Okay. Lynn Suave?
My name is Lynn Save, and I live at 7676 East Arizona Drive. I don't live in that area. I am an Arapahoe County resident, but I am a 4 square mile resident, so I had a couple of comments. I'm in favor of the project. Oh, I should also mention I'm on the development committee for 4 square mile too. So I am in favor of the project because I feel like the developer has done and continues to have good communication with the neighborhoods. They, first of all, it fits the 4 square mile sub-area plan, so we always like to see that. And the developer did come and speak with our 4 square mile development committee a while back, and they are scheduled to come to the 4 square mile general meeting in March. So they've done that, and I really appreciate that. I hope that the traffic issue can be resolved, but I don't have any comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chairman Wilhelm?
Good evening. I'm Cameron Wilhelm. I live at 1696 South Oneida Street. Again, Denver resident. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen. Really heartened to hear everyone's positive comments about the developer and how they've worked. I want to reiterate the traffic and just do so in the strongest possible terms, because regardless of whatever happens with locking the specific ingress and egress on Colorado Avenue, a lot of traffic from this development is going to be taken to Colorado Avenue anyway, because it's the only way. Just the confluence of the intersections with Cherry Creek Drive, Colorado Avenue, and Quebec Street, so many of those residents are going to be driving down Colorado Avenue and making an already bad traffic situation worse. I don't know the solution. It sounds like people that have been more involved than me have some ideas. But I would like to say that this preliminary plan as it exists, I don't think solves the issue. It sounds like a compromise, but it's going to create an ongoing issue. Some people have talked about Oak Park, which was the one right over, which also has ingress and egress only for emergency vehicles onto Colorado Avenue. That development is very different because the entrance and exit are on Cherry Creek Drive and not Quebec. So they can only go on Cherry Creek Drive, and that traffic isn't taking Colorado Avenue. So this one will be different, and more thought needs to be put into how to solve it. Thank you.
Thank you. The last name we have on the sign-in sheet is Judy Korzanek.
No problem. I'm good.
You're good. Okay. Does anybody else wish to come forward and make any comments?
Can I start from one number? Just so
maybe
lane.
No, we were looking for somebody new.
Okay, just want a number real quick.
Anybody else? Mr. 4 square mile?
Oh, there's a woman.
Come forward. Your name and address, please.
Okay, I'm Gabriela Bata, and I live in the Oak Park community, gated community. I've been there for many years. I grew up there. Colorado Avenue is a very narrow street in itself right now. People are avoiding going on Evans, so they take that route to get to Evans, so it's already congested. So this just adds more problem into it. And my concern is, again, I think they should close that East Colorado Avenue. I'm surprised that it took this long
So, and I think that there's too many units in that acre.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lampert?
Good evening, Planning Board members. Mark Lampert, 9022 East Colorado Drive, here tonight speaking on behalf of the 4 Square Mile neighborhoods. As you have heard, this developer has approached us numerous times, albeit a little late in the planning process. As we have always said, we always like developers to come at the very early stage when they are starting out so that we can field a lot of the concerns that we have. And the fact that this matched up with the 4 Square Mile sub-area plan is always a good opening salvo. So we appreciated that. From the numbers work to us. We talked about the 3-story to a 2-story because of the height, and so we're glad to see that. The concerns that we had were traffic, as much as you've heard from the residents. But what I must compliment all of you as Arapahoe County Planning Board, that you're always welcoming Denver residents to speak. However, your counterparts in Denver do not welcome Arapahoe County citizens to speak before them. So you should all be proud of us in Arapahoe County. So numerous times I've tried to speak at Denver and they won't allow me. So anyway, the concern is in regards to the area that you heard to the far left side there, right here. We have a tremendous elevation problem sitting here, and this goes as a slope up. So from their standpoint of drainage and open space, that is the low spot. That's where they had to work their drainage on there. The concern that we had was always the traffic on Colorado, but unfortunately, this being kind of an island of Arapahoe County surrounded by Denver, we have that same problem that we have as we had in Arapahoe County on Florida and the canal. Denver County is not willing to cooperate in the safety of our citizens as well as Denver citizens. This is another prime example on a Colorado and Quebec intersection. I doubt that there'll ever be a signalized intersection there, and I think that what this developer has done to mitigate some of that traffic will be shown over the years. I think that overall, we are in favor of this project. We're looking forward to seeing the next phase as we start to see the design. You saw the same pictures that we saw of what the elevations are looking at. We also picked out numerous ones that fit into the 4 Square Mile area and also into this neighborhood. Some of those, as you saw, were pretty flat boxed, and those are not what we want to see here because we still have that rural feel. If you drive by this parcel, you'd think you were out in Elbert County with the former horse property that was there. So overall, we're very pleased with this, and I can't reiterate enough about Mike Sullivan and his team reaching out. As you've heard from the citizens of Denver, which when we first started, we said those are his real people that he needs to talk to because they're going to be backing up. I think he's gone a long way to work on the fencing, which we brought up about having a shared fence or something because we don't want to see 2 fences. The property owners on Poplar and the property owner of this development. We don't want no man's land. We want one fence, one continuous fence. That makes it for his property as well as the other. We know that works because we have it over in the part where Lugano was with that subdivision there, where one fence continuous there, and everybody was able to take down their fence, and it worked out. So those are positive things that we'll continue to work on as we get to the next phase. So again, we would fully support this project at this time, subject to future developments that you'll hear from us on. Thank you.
See you next time. Thank you. Does anybody else wish to come forward? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. I was wondering if Mr. Haskins here? Do you have any comments about
The traffic?
on traffic?
Yeah, actually, Kurt Cotton's going to present.
Okay. I mean, is there a possibility of working with Denver on any of this?
Yeah, I think that there's possibilities. Kurt will talk.
Okay.
Would you like
That would be fine. Yes.
Good evening, Kurt Cotton with the Engineering Services Division of Arapahoe County. So we've been receiving the public feedback on this development. However, there is an existing traffic study for this proposal. They studied it as proposed with the 2 full movement accesses, and Arapahoe County had no objections to it. Kind of the reasoning is that there's very high volumes of cut-through traffic on Colorado Avenue, and this development's addition to that is 5 trips in the PM peak hour, so it's relatively minor. So we weren't requiring the developer to make it an EVA. However, to address public comments, if the developer were to revise his proposal, he could revise the traffic study, and we would review that and see if that could be accomplished. And I'll try to go through a couple of the other questions that were asked. Hopefully, I don't miss any big ones. So making the Quebec Street access, or so I should say, a lot of the proposals were good ideas, but they're kind of regional in nature. Like the right and right out in Quebec are improvements to the intersection of Cherry Creek Drive and Monaco. However, we are in the early stages of partnering with Denver on a study of the Florida Avenue and Quebec corridors, where they might review some of the timing of these signals and other proposed improvements to see what we can do to improve traffic operations there. So that would be where a right and right out onto Quebec might come into play, might not. So they talked about signals. So the signals don't meet warrants. The signals have to meet the established signal warrants in order before we can install them. And the traffic study they did analyze that, and there's just not enough side street volume. They analyzed Jewel. There's not enough side street volume there to meet signal warrants. So that's where that ended up. And we talked about drainage. They want to make sure the drainage is adequate. So they have on their site plan, you can see there a water quality and detention pond that's going to capture, it's a full spectrum detention pond. It will capture the 100-year flows, and then there'll be a storm sewer installed that connects to an existing storm sewer that'll convey that off-site. So hopefully that addresses those concerns. And I have the Phase 1 drainage report here that I can hand out if someone wants. And then the Phase 3 will be, that will be the final design will be coming in the future. And then we talk about access on the Asbury. If the developer to propose that, we could review that as well. So that's what came out of the county's review of the project.
Do you have a question?
So you haven't reviewed the Asbury?
No, so they analyzed this site as shown here. So that's what's in the traffic study. So if the developer were to change course and now they want to tie in over there, then that would be a new analysis that we would review. So
I have a question, Madam.
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify, maybe I didn't hear correctly. So, because we're looking at proposed 74 units, and I think you said that the traffic increase in Colorado would be 5 additional trips during peak hours. Is that right?
Let me quote from the study.
It could be my ears, but I just wanted to make sure I heard that right.
And I think that is right. So in 2025, they're projecting 5 left turns in the AM peak hour. So it's just in the peak hour.
That's Denver's predicting that?
Harris Coker Smith is the developer's traffic engineer on the project.
Going to work at home? Crazy. Come on.
Okay. Yeah, I think we talked on the phone. Can I comment? I agree with the numbers 100%. Wait, you're looking at.
You can't have comments from the audience now. The public hearing is closed. Sorry.
Yeah, I think maybe I don't think they're traffic engineers here, but they're civil engineers here that might be a little more familiar with how that was calculated.
I'd just be curious because it just seems to me that if it's 2.3 parking spaces per unit and 74 units, that's awfully low number for peak hours. And, I live in District 4 and I've seen the train wrecks on South Quebec from people who have stop signs, so I'm just, I'm feeling the concern here, and I'm thinking about how South Quebec Way or Street is going to work out with these, left-hand turns during peak hours.
And so they're calculating 526 total daily trips. In the morning, it's 36 total trips. And so the trips, so we're only talking about the left turns, and they're split between Jewel and Colorado. So the total trips would be 36 in the AM peak hour.
Okay. But you're only looking at eastbound traffic and not westbound.
That would be total for the development, so it's going in all directions. And they do a trip assignment and try to weight it towards where people are more likely to go.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions for Mr. Cotton? Thank you.
Thanks.
Does Mr. Sullivan wish to come forward and make any comments in relation to the public's statements?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that request?
Did you want to make any other comments after hearing what the public has said, or maybe you already know their concerns?
Yeah, it was good to hear everyone's comments. I appreciate, again, everyone in the community reiterating those comments. We're committed to continuing to work through, and whether this is an EVA or a limited movement right out only is something that's also been discussed. So once we get to that specific development plan process, we intend to continue to move forward and work with traffic engineers to figure out what the best solution is here. So we're committed to doing that. I know that there were some comments about East Colorado being narrow. I just want to reiterate that we're widening East Colorado, so I know that right there is going to make a big improvement because it is narrow. Our property frontage never was improved with sidewalk, curb gutter, and everything else. So once that happens, I think it's going to be a safer driving situation out there. So with that, again, if you have any questions for us, we're available.
Mr. Chapman, you will look at the Asbury.
Yeah, that was something that did come up. Thanks for that question. It did come up in one of our community meetings, and I would say about a quarter of the room, when they heard that, instantly said, "Oh, we don't want traffic going that direction." So there were several challenges with getting access over there, including the fact that we're now would be building a full road through our open space and then trying to connect, and we don't actually own the frontage to get from there to Poplar or Asbury, that intersection. So there's some challenges there. If that's something that we felt like staff really wanted us to study, we could definitely study it. But I think that if we could work on the EVA or right turn out only, I think that's probably a better solution and is going to raise fewer issues in the community.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for Mr. Sullivan?
Yeah, just real quick. There was one other gentleman that talked about either runoff or drainage off of the property.
Right.
How is that going to be handled? Is the elevation pretty much the same all the way to the neighborhood or to the?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we have been coordinating with that gentleman a little bit too in terms of making sure that those concerns are addressed. It does vary along that frontage because it's quite a long frontage, and so each lot has a little bit of a different interface with our project. So what we'll have to do in the design, when we get to construction details, we're going to have to just look at every lot and make sure that what we're doing is not creating a situation where we'd have any water flow onto their lot. So we'll have an opportunity to improve the drainage along that entire frontage.
Very good. Thank you. Any other final questions?
Just a comment, Madam Chair. I would encourage the residents of Denver County to call your city council people, okay, and encourage the prompt completion of that joint study that's being done between Arapahoe County and the County of Denver regarding the traffic off of Florida, because if they're looking at traffic control and traffic calming measures, you want that study done sooner rather than later. So I encourage you to call your elected officials.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Appreciate it.
Okay, well, do you have any other comments, Kathy? Then we will bring it back to the Planning Commission for consideration.
Madam Chair, if there are no comments, I'd like to make a motion.
Very good, thank you.
In the case GDP 18-005, towns at south of Cherry Creek General Development Plan, Planning Commissioners have reviewed the staff report, including all exhibits and attachments, and have listened to the applicant's presentation and public comment as prescribed or as presented at the public hearing. I hereby move to recommend approval of this application based on the findings in the staff report, subject to the conditions 1 and 2.
Do we have a second for the motion?
I second that motion, Madam Chair.
Woman makes a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all for coming. We're going to take a 5-minute break.
Yeah, it requires. It's either earlier, right? There you go. That's what I was saying. You know, I think you best like go out this door and see if you can find one. Yeah, no problem initially, huh?
Right, I'll double check the spaces on there. When I plugged in the HDMI cable, it was green flash, like it was recalibrating it, but it's not showing up there.
All right. I can really do it. Yeah, right, yes. Okay, how do I get it? Oh, it's up. Okay. We're going to continue the Planning Commission meeting with our second development proposal, SDP 18, Cherry Tree Estate Specific Development Plan, and Marley Orkin Larson is the planner from the county who will bring us up to date.
Good evening, Commissioners. Molly Orkild Larson, Senior Planner with the Public Works Department.
The county attorney has reviewed the public notice and it has determined that the applicant has met all of the public notice requirements, thereby establishing jurisdiction. What's before you this evening is a specific development plan for a senior community for individuals 55 years of age or older. The development will consist of 52 residential units, 7 memory care buildings, and 45 single-family attached homes for independent seniors. A clubhouse and a maintenance shed is also proposed within this development. The applicant is Cadmore Estates, LLC. The development is located east of South Quebec Street and adjacent to the Cherry Creek corridor. The subject property is entirely surrounded by the city and county of Denver. Access is proposed from South Quebec Street and East Colorado Avenue. The property was a former landfill. The applicant removed the debris in 2017 under the supervision of the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, also known as CDPHE. The property has received a no action of determination letter from CDPHE stating the property is safe. And they are present here tonight, so if you have any questions for this agency, they'll be more than happy to answer them for you. The applicant requested a reduction in the parking requirement from 172 to 176. The planning director did approve this request, and the letter is included in the staff report for further review. Staff did receive emails and a phone call from adjacent homeowners. The concerns included the review process, property access, landscaping to buffer Concha properties, and I believe there's some homeowners here that probably will talk more about that. Construction schedule and hours, possibly adding a traffic light at Iowa, and also the status of the cleanup of the site. I have addressed these concerns in the staff report, but I can go into more detail if you like. If you have any other questions, I'm more than happy to do so. Staff recommends this application for approval based on the findings in the staff report. The applicant is here tonight to present this project and to go into further detail. I'll turn it over to the applicant unless you have any questions.
I had a question about the variation of the code for lighting, and they're requesting 21.6 inches versus 20 feet for the code, and why that is necessary.
It has to be 20 feet for this type for residential measured at the top, and it does exceed that somewhat, so we're just noting that. We don't think it's that big of a deal, and we're more than happy to work with the applicant to make sure that it meets the requirements for lighting along pathways and in the parking lot.
Okay, so it'll be cast down
Yes, it'll be shielded and cast down.
Okay. Any other questions? Not at this time, I guess. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. They'll be coming up. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Melissa Kendrick, and I am representing Tim Van Meter. He's the owner of Cherry Tree Estates. He is going to speak the second half of this presentation, so I'm going to kind of walk you through our proposal. So we appreciate your time this evening. Let's start. It's interesting, the previous application was on East Colorado Avenue, and this is kind of on East Colorado Avenue as well, an alignment of it. So here we are. It is this triangular shape on South Quebec Street. This is where East Colorado Avenue comes through, and it actually cul-de-sacs right here. So this is the Cherry Creek itself. The property actually that gets to the property goes through the city of Denver on both the East Colorado side and the Quebec side. I have a couple more images that will kind of fill in that picture. Molly mentioned the fact that this property is zoned PD mixed use. We got the zoning in 2016, and it is for senior housing. The heart of that zoning is this age restriction. So 80% of the units have to be occupied by persons 55 years of age or older. And those are really federal It's a federal law that helps dictate how that happens, and covenants will help ensure that that occurs. But that's really the heart of the zoning. This is the preliminary development plan that was approved at the time. The property is 10.6 acres in size, and it's divided into planning area 1, kind of the north half, and planning area 2, the south half. At that time, we did establish all kinds of criteria in that chart, which you couldn't begin to read, and I don't want you to. But it's building heights and densities. It addressed architectural details and parking requirements, etc. A great deal of information, as you know. And what I'm going to do is walk you through how I believe we either meet or exceed the requirements of the preliminary development plan. As part of this SDP application, we will have to plat. That's not what's before you tonight, but we will plat into one lot. It's kind of simple. It includes a lot of easements, so there are access and utility easements. And one of the features of this property is that Excel has an easement 75 feet wide right down the middle of it. So that actually, as we get into the site plan, really begins to dictate how it's laid out. That. I always do this, don't I? All right, that's good. Okay, so here's the access off of Quebec, and there is this gap, which is proving to be a challenge because we have Quebec here and then City of Denver property to get to the entrance, basically, of the Cherry Tree Estates. So we are working closely with the City of Denver in their engineering. All kinds of agencies and permits are required in order to get us where we need to go. And so you read some of that in the staff report. The next step in our process is that administrative site plan. We actually have that submitted, and that's when a lot of these details will be confirmed. And here we are again at this, where we have the East Colorado Avenue cul-de-sac and the entrance into the development. Another image, it's maybe a little more helpful because you get the aerial and you get to see this gap. So one of the things you read about is signage. And again, with the ASP, we will make sure that the fire district and the sheriff are able to find this community. As a senior housing community, that will be very important. The project is gated, and I'll go into that a little bit more. So this is the SDP. You've had an opportunity to review that. We believe it really matches closely with what the PDP describes. So again, here's the entrance off of Quebec. Here's the circulation pattern that comes in, kind of circulates through in a circuitous manner, and then you can exit or enter off of Colorado Avenue. There'll be the entire property will be fenced and it's gated. So one of the concerns the neighbors had before is kind of cut through traffic. Really the purpose of the fencing and the gating is the security of the residents. As a memory care facility, it's important people really can't get out. So that's one aspect of this. What we have are the 6 of the memory care facilities are these larger footprints with 4 of the townhomes. And then on the planning area 2, we have the balance, 41 townhomes here and 1 of the memory care facilities. So these are kind of the larger footprint. Again, these charts are unreadable, and I'll go through a couple of the details that I think are important, but they really demonstrate that we meet or exceed the requirements of the PDP. So density was one of the issues that within the neighbors and the surrounding neighborhoods during the PDP, we spent a lot of time on this topic. But this demonstrates, here's the PDP column for planning area 1, and this is additional. 6 plus 4 is 10. So we meet that for planning area 1. And in planning area 2, we are allowed 43, and we're proposing 42. So again, 41 plus 1 gets us to the 42. So we're really 1 unit under, which makes us just the density slightly less than what it could be. And that's demonstrated down here. So we're at like 4.88 instead of 4.98. The building heights, we talked a lot about this at the PDP. The assisted living was approved in planning area 1 to be 32 feet and 2 stories. And we are proposing 22 feet and 1 story. Same with the single family attached, we could be at 32 feet, 2 stories, we're at 20 feet, 1 story. And then in planning area 2, the townhomes could be as high as 38 feet, 3 stories, that would fit with some of the surrounding neighborhood, but in fact we're at 1 story and 22 feet for the assisted living residences and the townhomes. So again, it's really well under the density and the kind of the intensity that could be allowed. And briefly, I wanted to just show you the level of detail and quality that these buildings are being designed with. They're brick veneer and tile roofs. A lot of the concern is, will these be compatible with the surrounding area? We really think we kind of raised the bar a little bit, but certainly, meet or exceed the standards in that area. So there's a lot of detailing that goes with these, and the roof lines are really kind of broken up, so the massing of the structures, even though they're single story, are really broken down to appear smaller. The only building that's 2-story is the clubhouse, which is kind of in the center. It's the furthest not the furthest, but it's in the center. So it's significantly away from those property lines and well within our guidelines. Again, this is the townhome project. So with that, Molly mentioned the parking. We did request a reduction in parking, and we were granted that. It's the 5 spaces that you see here. So instead of 70, we're proposing 65. And the reason we requested that was because the code is actually right here. It doesn't really address memory care facilities adequately from our perspective, because you can imagine people don't drive. So we're slightly different than an assisted living residence. And so up here demonstrates that for the townhomes, we match the code. But for the assisted living residence, there's slightly less. So rather than 1 space per 2 beds, we're at like 0.8 spaces per 2 beds. We got there several ways, but one was looking at the adjacent jurisdictions and what were they doing, as well as how Tim's current facility operates. And so knowing, he runs, and he's going to speak to this in a moment, knowing how that runs, how that operation runs and the parking that he needs, we are very comfortable with this number. It's probably higher than what he actually needs, but it's pretty close to what the code is, and it's a good compromise. So with that, I'm turning this over to Tim to talk a little bit more about his operation and the parking. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kendrick.
Mm-hmm. This one? Do you want to run this or do you want me to?
I'll do that.
Forward and back.
Gotcha. Hi, I'm Tim Van Meter. I'm the owner of this 10.6 acre site. I purchased this in 2008. We put it under contract in 2006, knowing all the problems that it had. I have 3 pages of funny little jokes that I was going to tell you, but I'm not going to waste your time or mine with that tonight. Because I've got a couple of gentlemen here that I think you might have questions for. The Alzheimer's Association prints up this document, and I've provided each of you with a copy of that. In the time that, that I will stand up here, in the time that I will stand up here, there will be 3 more people diagnosed with Alzheimer's in the United States. There will be 4 people turn 65. My 3rd page back, look at that with me. Colorado right now has 71,000 people diagnosed with Alzheimer's. By 2025, we will have 92,000 people. It's more people than it'll take. Those people would not fit in Mile High Stadium. That's given the fact that 1 in 3 seniors with Alzheimer's dies. So with those people succumbing to Alzheimer's, even with that happening, by 2025, we will have a 30% increase here in Colorado. Those issues, I have put the description of Alzheimer's. I don't know if you have any questions about that. But those problems with Alzheimer's quite possibly started 20 years before the symptoms started showing. 1 in 3 seniors will pass away from this disease. And finally, and I'm going a little faster than I thought I would, the Alzheimer's Association says it would cost us $340,000 to take care of somebody with Alzheimer's. I can't rent an apartment in Denver for that. So I think that number is very, very low. Those townhomes will be occupied by a married couple. This is how I envisioned this. And that married couple will get support out of that clubhouse for home health care. And that man and wife will be able to live together just a little longer. The memory care buildings, the U-shaped buildings up there, there will be 16 people in each one of those. They do not drive. There will be 4 people on staff at any one time. And most of my staff in Arvada, they don't drive either. Today when I left, there were 9 spaces of 23 were occupied. About 40% of the spaces were occupied. There were 3 cars on the street, and the reason they were parked in the street is because their car parked out there that puts them a little closer to the front door of the building they're working in. Do I have times when every parking space is taken and there's 10 cars on the street? Absolutely. But that's once a month. It's so infrequent that it's irrelevant. Today was a much more standard situation. We did cut down on the heights of this. These are, with the exception of that clubhouse, everything here is 1 story, 19 feet tall, where I could build something 38 feet. So we're actually up there in the North Planning Area 1. We've cut that down by 2 stories and 19 feet. Cut it in half. I have 2 guests here tonight. I have Fonda Apostolopoulos from the Colorado Department of Health and Paul Stone, an environmental engineer specialist who was on site the whole time that we did the big dig. And I'd like them to come up if you guys would. So much for my 3 minutes of jokes. You have a gentleman here. You might introduce yourself and tell them what
Yes,
you do.
my name is Fonda Apostolopoulos. I'm the Volunteer Community Brownfields Coordinator for the state of Colorado. I deal with sites like this every day. Colorado, especially Denver, with what's going on with building and everything else, every site's a brownfield site. Especially up in this area here, I've actually got 3 other projects that are being proposed. This whole area is full of landfills. By doing what Tim is doing, he is doing a bunch of stuff. First off, he's cleaned up the area of the community because we had large levels of methane that were uncontrolled leaving the site that could actually end up forming in people's buildings. And on top of that, we had some small water quality issues too from the leaching coming to the landfill. So by him doing what he did, it's bringing the property back to be more productive. It's no longer to be a dump where people's going to do midnight dumping, things like that. And at the same time, these are more and more things that happen all around the city right now. And it's nice to have someone who puts it at the right time to be able to make something like this. Otherwise, these properties will become vacant and nothing will ever happen to it because of liability. And because when you buy these properties, you're buying the liability goes with them, even though he wasn't the person who had the landfill. And as a state, we like to work with these people to try to figure out what's the best and most positive use of this property to make it back on the tax payroll, and at the same time to be able to help the community work together also. And this has been something that Tim and the engineer worked with me very closely for. Tim, when you came out 2008, 2009, worked with Mark Rudolph.
2007, actually.
Yeah, that's right. So this has been a long time coming for Tim to make this all happen. And because of the economies and money from EPA and the state, we've been able to all get together, assess this property, and figure out what needs to be done to make this safe for the community again and to be able to build upon. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm Paul Stone, Stonegate Land and Water. Worked with Tim back from day one, back in 2007 or so, and with Fonda's help, we were able to successfully clean up the property. It's someplace that Tim runs a quality facility, and as a personal side note, my mother is in this category, and if she did live in Colorado, I would have no problem moving her into Tim's facility. He runs a class operation, and happy to work with him and with Honda. And I think they've done a good job, and the property will be well used.
Thank you.
You have a question? Great.
Can you just give us like your elevator speech as to what you did to clean up the property? And is there any residual methane?
I won't talk about who told me there were only 2,500 truckloads out there, semi-loads. There were 4,064 semi-loads that we actually unearthed, put them in a semi-truck, hauled them out to the Denver Aurora dump site, and disposed of them out there. Were you there? Were there any truckloads leaving when you weren't on site, or were you there?
No, I was there the whole time. It was mid-60s trash. Is very interesting. What was coming out, the President Johnson and the Vietnam War and in the newspapers and things. Very little plastic.
Yes. People understand landfills. People think about plastic. It's very common to go out landfills, even forest landfills, to pull out refuse and to be able to read paper, newspaper. It's very common that happens. People think of the plastic problem, everything else. It's everything. Here in Colorado, we're dry. And if things stays up, and because of that, with the water table, we get much more methane production, things like that. So by cleaning up these areas, it just makes it better for the environment and for the people living around it also.
So we took out 4,064 truckloads. The Denver Aurora dump site has 5 million cubic yards of soil that my soil engineer said would be perfect to refill and build roads and basement areas out of that material. So we had them haul that back. They gave it to me for $25 a truckload. That was cover the cost of the loading, and this for free. So it was a gift, actually.
We went through several iterations of planning with Fonda and whether we were going to vent the trash and how long would it take to reduce the methane levels, and then once it was vented, could you even build on it? At the time, would it be structurally sound? That was finally arrived at with Fonda's help, suggesting just to.
One thing we did also is that what's so difficult about all these sites are there's not a bank in the world that's going to loan you money to develop on a contaminated property. So what we did is we worked with Tim to work with what we call the Colorado Rapids Revolving Loan Fund. We actually have money with CHAPA, the Colorado Housing Finance Authority, where we basically work as a loan to do the transition between construction and the cleanup and actually the vertical construction. So he applied through us. That's why he had to come in the voluntary cleanup program. We did oversight. I was called out quite a few times by some certain people who were concerned, but every time I went out there, it was nice to see an operation that was run correctly and follow the rules and regs and everything else. So they came to us. It was a win-win. We loaned them money. He's actually in the process now of paying us back so we can reload that money out to somebody else's people property. And it's one of our big success stories here too, because when we get money from the EPA, we like to see not just that we gave money out, but what happens, how many jobs we create, how many homes we develop, things like that, how many acres we cleaned up. And this is what puts the EPA brownfields program to get more money, because it's projects like this that need the money to be able to make it happen and become vertical.
We'll come back to that jobs thing. Did we find any, we had a certified asbestos building inspector there for every truckload, every shovelful we got put in a truck. Did we find any large or even small samplings of asbestos?
No, it was very interesting what was coming out of there and the limited, what I would call dirty dirt. The dull asbestos or the occasional shingle, the occasional piece of floor tile. Right.
And how many cubic yards of riprap? That was stone.
That's rock. There's rock piled out there that was put out in the 1950s, I guess. That was the actual bank of Cherry Creek before the big flood in 1963. And the creek moved south about 200 feet. So that riprap rock, I can't say that, is now stacked on my property. So we found no asbestos. We didn't find Jimmy Hoffa. We didn't find a Corvette. A lot of bottles, whiskey bottles. Somebody in South Denver was a big drinker. That was about it, right?
It's pretty innocuous. It's nice it wasn't your typical municipal landfill. You find everything. It had some construction debris, things like that. Some municipal. The odor was If you've been out to a landfill site before and been dug up, it's not fun. You learn very quickly that you make sure whenever you pull up, the windows are all closed, because on a warm day, if you leave the window open, it'll be full of flies. And I didn't have that problem going out there when I did my inspection. So
That's because Paul made me go into Atlanta or someplace and buy these 5-gallon jugs of perfume to put in our sprayer, and we would try to keep that open stacks sprayed down with that material. Was it perfume or what was that?
It's all perfume.
Jobs. We'll create about 225 jobs.
When you removed all of the landfill and then you brought dirt back in, so is the site level?
No.
Is it
I'm
going to
going
be?
basements underneath those townhomes in that lower section there. There's 21,000 cubic yards of basements going in. And my civil engineer, did he leave? Oh, Kevin Roth, says I need 20,999 cubic yards to fill that hole. So I'm really close.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can you?
Right, Kevin?
You mentioned that there was some water cleanup that you needed to do.
What happens is whenever you have a landfill, you have the water percolates through. You have this called leachate. There's elevated levels of what's called PAHs, which is polyaromatic hydrocarbons, which is typically what you find in asphalt. And they're cancer-producing constituents. However, once you remove the source, that cleans up very quickly. So the whole point was to remove all the source material to where Mother Nature takes care of that and flushes it out.
Okay, so there was no groundwater contamination.
One thing we did before, and to get this approved, we had to go drill wells.
Right.
Had to do
That's
testing.
what I was going to ask
Soil
you about.
testing, water
You had
testing.
test wells.
And water levels are below the level of where the fill was.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Actual physical water, not the contamination.
I believe that Cherry Creek is 26 feet below the level of Cherry Creek. The static level there is 26 feet below the level right underneath those power lines there. And our water table on this property, if I remember correctly, was like 21 feet.
21.
I don't understand that, why there was a 5-foot difference there. The hydraulics.
And as far as the groundwater, I'm going to emphasize, there are points within the property that had elevated levels, however, they were not leaving the property. That's the reason why we felt more comfortable removing the source. We weren't concerned about it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Not what I want to do up there.
Do you have more to say?
No.
Actually, Madam Chair, I do have a question for you as far as, since we talked quite a bit about traffic in the last round. So on your access points, particularly going on to Quebec, how's that going to work? Is that a right-in?
Quebec is a right-in and right-out.
Okay.
That's correct. The east gate coming off of, I don't know how to turn that on, but the east gate coming down here off of Colorado Avenue, that will actually be, the whole site will be gated. The only folks really using that east gate will be me and the fire department and the ambulance, first responders. Employees won't be coming in from over there. There won't be any deliveries coming in from over there. There'll be a really low amount of traffic coming in and out of there.
Okay.
Turn that back to that side plan. Our traffic study done by Roach and Company looked at what an assisted living with memory care site would, and his findings, correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, was negligible impact on traffic? It was very low.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we will now open the public hearing. Do we have a sign-in sheet for this one? Thank you, sir. Okay, we do have several people signed in, and I will read your names as they are listed, and we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. The first one is Nancy Grove on South Trenton Street.
Hi there, my name's Nancy Gary and I live at 1699 South Trenton Street, number 53. And can you bring the site plan back up on there for so I can, okay, so one of my main concerns is definitely the traffic on Colorado. And I understand, and you know, he says that it's only going to be used for, you know, first responders, so it's basically an emergency entrance. But, I mean, is that just what he's saying, or is that actually going to be in the record that it's only going to be an emergency and they can't really start opening it up to other things? Because there's, like, that whole Colorado is just full. It's all, I call that my whole area Townhome Row, because it's all condos and there is a little subdivision. So there's a lot of, you know, traffic that goes down Colorado. And, you know, if that's going to go into the cul-de-sac, it's going to be, it's just, you know, a lot of people drive, you know, and I'm probably just as guilty sometimes too, driving too fast down that road. So I can see that there could be a lot of problems with, you know, if it's not stated in the record that that's only going to be an emergency access point. And then the other thing I was, you know, I'm really happy about the, everything's going to one, you know, single level, because I live right behind it, and right now I have a perfect view of all the mountains. And so, you know, that was always my concern, was that our view was going to be ruined. So I guess I don't understand why everything was going to come down to 1 and the clubhouse has to stay at 2. So I don't know why, what the reasoning behind that is. Because this is the first time I've actually seen what the layout is, because when they sent it out to us, they just sent us this little square. So we really, you know, couldn't come here with really any, I didn't really know what it was going to look like. So the other problem, the other thing I'm concerned about is I said I live right behind there. So I don't think he actually said, are these places going to have garages, or are they just going to have parking spots? So, and then the lighting, I mean, I guess I'm concerned if it's all parking spots, there's going to be a lot more lighting, so it's going to be really bright behind my, you know, my bedroom window. So that's just kind of the couple concerns that I have about the place.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Lynn Suave?
Yeah, my name is Lynn Save, and I live at 7676 East Arizona Drive, and I'm an Arapahoe County resident. I'm in favor of, and I'm also on the 4 Square Mile Development Committee. I'm in favor of this project. I think that Tim and his team did a really commendable job of communication with the neighborhoods, and that's always a big thing for me. He came to our 4 Square Mile Development Committee really early on to let us know what was going on. He and his team also came to our 4 Square Mile General Meeting too early on. Now, I know that there were some early issues with the neighborhood. There were height issues and easement issues and the traffic issue that the First Lady brought up. But I think that he was consistent and steadfast with working through that, and I know that there were some concessions made with regard to changing or reducing the height, and also, I think, reducing easement, but I'm not certain about that. The other thing that I just wanted to say as an anecdotal little story that I've heard rumor that during the removal of the debris process that he had even somehow swayed some of the neighbors in favor of the project, such that one of the neighbors baked cookies for him when they were removing the debris. And I don't know of many neighbors who are bringing cookies to developers, so that impressed me personally that something was going right. So that's what I wanted to say tonight.
Mary Frey?
The neighbor was working.
Yeah. On Roseman Street? Mary?
I didn't sign up to speak, although
Please come forward if you're going to make any comments.
but I would be happy to. My name is Mary Tracy, and I live at 1646 South Rosemary Street. If you look at the 3 horseshoe-shaped memory care units that are in the upper right-hand corner, I live immediately behind the middle one. 20 feet from the fence, and that will be 20 feet from the fence. So needless to say, I've had quite an experience. When I don't know what perfume they used, but it never swept over me when the odor was. I looked down one morning and Governor Lamb was greeting me. The newspaper, the plastic in the yard, it really was bad. But it was necessary. Most of the time they sprinkled to keep some of the dust down, sometimes not so much. But I have to say it was an amazing operation. I think the traffic, I don't know whether you could tell from the colored display where Colfax, where these people will be entering and exiting from Colfax, but it is not a quarter of a mile, a few blocks from the previous development. The previous development is on the other side of the street, just the other side of Cherry Creek. This is on the north side, just the other side of Cherry Creek where the bridge is. We've already had the traffic analysis of Florida and Iowa. They refused to put a light in at Iowa, and they've made a double left turn at Florida. We are packed with traffic. So, and I think the easement there for the access from Colorado, that is just a cul-de-sac, and there's a lot of drainage over in that area that goes down into Cherry Creek, and I haven't heard how that's been addressed. So, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, the Fonda has already spoken from the Colorado Department and Highways and Representative. Yeah, okay. Lisa Foreman.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us Denver residents again. And I really want to do a shout out to Molly, who I think is my pen pal at this point, because I've written you so many emails. And I just want to thank you for all of your prompt replies and that you forward things on to other people in your staff to respond to us. And I really, really do appreciate that. I live at 1625 South Syracuse Street. I really live very close to where Mary lives, and if you look at those three horseshoe buildings, my townhome basically faces the easternmost horseshoe. I want to say that most of our neighborhood is very pleased. This community turned out to be a single-story community. It was one of our biggest concerns when we met with you back at the zoning, and also that the community was going to be gated. That was another one of our concerns, and I'm really pleased that the developer really responded in a positive manner to our concerns. You know, my concern is really more with the ADP because it shows a more detailed landscape plan, and I wanted to say that there is an easement that goes along the north side and the east side of the property, and it's our fence, and there's a 20-foot setback, as Mary said, on each side. And what is proposed on Mr. Van Meter's side to put in his 20-foot easement is a basic native grass mix that goes to about 12 inches. We were really hoping that there would be required a better landscape barrier between the very few houses that really front on those three buildings, and the two buildings on the other side are not part of, don't face Concha, they face Granville. So what I would like to request is that there be some kind of significant more planting in the setback area so that there will be a landscape buffer between our property and his. I understand that there is a trickle channel in that area, but there are many, many varieties of evergreens and juniper shrubs that don't shed and are fast growing and might, be over the fence to help shield his development from our backyards. Other than that, I don't really have any comments, and I do thank you for your time. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Could I make a comment, Molly or Kid Larson? We did hear Lisa's concern about that, and initially the first specific development plan didn't have a lot of landscaping there. We did recommend more, and it is a condition of approval, and we will be looking at the landscaping focus on that area on both multifamily developments that border this property and screening attempts.
So then what forthcoming?
Yes, and I am a landscape architect, so I know species, so that'll help, hopefully.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, George and Joanne Evans. Not here, I guess. Jeffrey Moore. from Boulder? I guess not. And the last one is Judy Korzenik.
I'm fine.
You're fine. Okay, very good. Is there anybody else that wishes to come forward? Yes.
Hi, my name is Dean Foreman, husband of Lisa, and thank you for giving me the time. We did work for quite a while with this developer, and I must say that back and forth through all the back and forth we did, we're quite pleased with the way it came out. I am the Architect Control Committee for the community, so I do represent the HOA. They aren't here specifically. We do have a couple of concerns about traffic, but it's Denver's traffic, so it's not something that you can really deal with. The one thing I'd say is that we continue to see the intersection at his driveway to the street shown differently than the permitted intersection. So we assumed that it would be built as the permitted intersection, not what you see here. And the reason for my concern there is this is directly on the other side of a bridge. The bridge has a hump in it, and what we're seeing for the traffic coming down Quebec in this direction is that due to the timing of the lights between Iliff and that intersection at Cherry Creek Drive, the timing of it makes it such that people drive faster to get through the intersection. And they go 50 miles an hour down that street to get through that so they can make it. And that puts them coming over that bridge at a pretty quick pace. What we're trying to do is work with Denver to see if we can't get them to change the timing of the lights. What they're doing is, essentially, this is a right in, right out. So there is no way for anyone in this development to go left or to go south at all. And I understand, again, it's not your issue, it's Denver's traffic problem, but they're talking about closing off Iowa to left-hand turns, which really starts to create kind of a cluster of people now having to come into our neighborhood to get around. And it is one of our concerns about the people here. We understand there'll be less traffic. And again, we're very, very pleased that it's gated. That made us very happy. And that he did what he said he would do, which is to keep almost everything at one story. So we're very pleased, and we thank the developer for his work with us. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else wish to come forward? Mr. Lampert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Mark Lampert, 9022 East Colorado Drive, tonight here representing 4 Square Mile Neighborhoods. First of all, when Tim and I started, I had more hair and he had darker hair. So that's how long we've been working on this. And actually, we go back at the very beginning before 4 Square Mile was actually formed. When we sat down with him, he provided us with a tabletop display that would take up over 4 or 5 of these tables to show us what he was talking about doing. But we all knew, being residents of this area for a long time, that that was a dump. Denver kept dumping onto Arapahoe County at that time. And we could see it because of the fact that there were so many things sticking up, barrels, cement, everything. It was a treacherous area to go through. And at one point in time, there was even a sign, because this area, the only way to get to it was by a helicopter or parachute, because it was basically landlocked by Denver. And I admire the tenacity of Tim in going with Denver to try to get access onto Quebec, because that was the only way this was going to work. And so from that standpoint, that was a great boon. And once he got that, then it was moving forth. And I know that cleaning that up, because I learned a science fair project by him where he had the display of what he was going to do to harness the methane gas that was coming out of there. And it would rival any science fair project today at that time. So, very good. Couple of the things that we have talked to over many, many years is the fact of the reduction in the parking. That's a hard concept to understand for us because we're always very rigid to the guidelines. Density, parking, height, all of that. And yet we understand after visiting his property that there is definitely a distinction of parking. And unfortunately, Arapahoe County Code doesn't specifically address a memory care, a senior facility. We're starting to move in that direction, and that's a good thing. So the parking, we had no problem with once we started to learn that that's an issue, and we didn't want to deal with it. Because we thought that it was acceptable the way it was. One of the side notes, and there are some of the residents that are here from Denver that are from the Concha homes, and it was interesting because when we first started this, we actually got Concha involved and started them thinking, because this is the neighboring project. Again, another island in the 4 square mile area because of the unincorporated part. And Denver would love to take it all, but because of the Poundstone Amendment, we can't expand Denver, so Arapahoe County is left with another parcel. And this is literally just down the block from where we talked about earlier this evening. The building heights were one of the biggest problems that we ran into at the very beginning, and again, this developer was very cooperative and set up heights with balloons so that all the residents in Concha could see what the building heights were. Now, at that time, we were at 2 stories. So the 2-story was what people looked at that height. And again, remember, this is the second time that we had a height by helium balloons to show visually what would be the maximum height of these buildings. And that proved very beneficial, but that also proved to us that that was way too high, not only for the citizens of Denver, but for our standpoint. And that's why we were glad when it went down to the 1 story. The development delay in this process actually became a boon to the developer, because now the Cherry Creek River Corridor design has picked up some of the work that he was going to have to do on the side of the Cherry Creek River because of the fact that he had a path going along there. Now the beautification process of the Cherry Creek River will enhance his southern boundary even more so than what he was going to do. So not only is it going to be impressive from the side of the Concha residents that are on the north, but on the side, on the south side, on the bike path, and along the canal, that will be almost his front door to everybody that's there. So that has changed, I think, and we'll look to that with the landscaping as much as we have there. You heard an unbelievable cleanup. We applaud him for taking the time to do that. That not too many developers will do that. And as I've told you many times standing here, that 4 square mile is wanting responsible development by responsible developers. This is a very responsible developer to take his time and his money to take it and clean it up for probably some of us that might want to reside there in years to come. So it's nice to know that. The density by far is definitely something we discussed at the very early stages. You saw that he brought that down. We are constantly being asked to exceed the density allowed in the sub-area plan. Meeting it or lowering it is what we're trying to do, and we're successful in that here, so we thank him for that. Again, I think the line here that we have is that this was probably one of the hardest parcels to develop, given all the history of what it was there. And the fact that he has, as you've heard, since 2006, being involved in this shows the dedication of his project that he wants to bring to us. I think also that when we started this, some of the members that lived in Denver are unfortunately no longer here to see what their hard work at the very early stages in the early 2000s brought to this point in time. I think that deep down, if we could have more developers that would take an earnest and listen to the neighbors, whether they be in Arapahoe County, whether they be in Denver County or wherever, I think that takes a lot to show you who we're dealing with. Because too many times we see developers that just come in, they just want to develop, they just want to turn a buck and they get out. The nice thing is with this type of development, this is not a for sale project. It's not a development that's going to be apartments eventually going to be converted. These are people that are going to be our neighbors forever, and that we're very appreciative. Because of the way that he runs his project, we know that this one will equally, if not better, exceed what he does right now. So we're happy to have him as our neighbor. So again, bottom line, we're very impressed with this. We would like to see this go forth. We're very anxious to see something other than dirt being moved, something being elevated out of this. So we'd like to see that. So we appreciate your positive vote on this and look forward to it coming as our new neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to come forward and speak on this project? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Molly, do you have any final comments? Okay. You'll bring it back to the Planning Commission?
Madam Chair, I did have one question for the applicant developer.
Yes. Mr. Van Meter?
I was just curious, can you describe, so the horseshoe of the memory care, is that a courtyard in the center?
It is.
And how will that be treated?
So
what would that look like, a typical?
So there'll be a kitchen right in front of that little horseshoe part. You could help me out, Mom. So right in that horseshoe, there will be a kitchen and a dining room with a set of glass doors going out to that backyard. There will be a fence across that horseshoe. There's pictured there, the fence. And it'll be a solid surface with a covering over top of it. It will not be conditioned air, but I will be able to go out there 9 months out of the year easily. I need to keep eyes on my residents, so this will let them have outdoor experience and yet be not in danger.
Right. Well, it looks like it will actually enhance the landscaping along that fence line, so I was curious how that was being treated.
Yeah, that fence line is going to be an issue. We're going to talk about that. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Is that fence a shared fence with the rest of
it? The shared fence? I'm sorry, which one? Fence?
Yeah, say along that north side.
That's shared. That's a complete. I think that's right on the property line with Concha, so it's a shared fence.
Okay, it is a shared fence. And then one of the other residents had questions about that exit in the lower right-hand corner, wherever that goes to Colorado. So is that truly going to be emergency only? I mean, how are you setting that apart from?
I'll be the only one to be able to open that. Just me and a select few people. I don't have residents coming out of those townhomes walking through this community. For most of my residents, a 15-minute to a half-hour walk is more than they can do. So they won't be going through to the pathway to get onto this really beautiful park to my south. So they're going to be walking within the community. And I have a lot of open space, a lot of green grass that's going to be in this area, in this triangle. So the traffic versus the gate, I can tell you I won't open that gate for cut-through traffic. The last thing I want is somebody coming through and us answering Nancy's question. Nancy, is it? Yeah. That I'm not just saying that. I don't want anybody cutting through there and hitting one of my residents. I don't want a delivery truck coming in from down there and running over somebody. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much.
The clubhouse height was brought up since I have the floor for a second. That clubhouse is, the hypotenuse of that triangle is 1,500 feet long. So that clubhouse is about 900 feet out from Nancy's line of sight. I can't tell you what exactly that looks like, but it's so far from your backyard that you're still, I believe, going to have a very good view of the mountains. The rest of these buildings right along your property line are one story. I can't do better than that. Trees in that trickle channel. I'd like to work with you on that, and I think that's with an ASP requirement. I don't know what I can put in there that SEMSWA will agree with, and because that trickle channel provides a very important piece to prevent water from flowing into Concha, which is about 3 feet lower than my land site. So that trickle channel can't get damaged.
We'll talk about it.
Okay. Other than that, I was told to say I agree with everything. Oh, the conditions of approval, yeah, I agree with that, so.
I think there was one more question about whether there were going to be garages.
There are going to be garages in the townhomes. One garage, one place garage, yes.
Thank you. Any other final questions? I guess not. Okay, we will bring it back to the Planning Commission for consideration. Anybody care to make a motion? Talk further. Mrs. Woolman?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion in the case of SCP 18-002, Cherry Creek Estates Specific Development Plan. The Planning Commissioners have reviewed the staff report, including all exhibits and attachments, and have listened to the applicant's presentation and the public comment as presented at the public hearing. I hereby move to approve this application based on the findings in the staff report, subject to conditions 1 through 10.
We have a second.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Mrs. Chapman has seconded the motion. Any other comments or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all for coming. Meeting is adjourned.
No, we have study session.
Do we have study session for real?